Hey guys, Devin here with Admiral Off-Road, and today we're going to be servicing our drum brakes. Let's get started. So we're starting with the Jeep up on the jack stands and the tire off. We're going to pull this drum off. Sometimes these like to stick, so I'm going to hit it with a little bit of penetrating oil first. Just kind of around where the threads are and around the center section here. There we go. Now this should come off, but sometimes you might have to hit it with a hammer. Oh. Actually, that came off really easy. Now that we've got the drum out of the way, we can see all of the springs and components of the that make up the drum brake. We're going to leave our axle shaft in place. A lot of people will take these out and really get access to all of this. But to do that on the Chrysler 8 1/4 and the Dana 35, they're C-clip axles, so we'd have to actually open up the differential, pull it out, and then we'd have to change our fluid and everything. So we're going to leave this in place. It's going to make it just a little bit harder to work around, but it's going to be definitely possible to do. I like to hit it with a little bit of brake cleaner as well. Just kind of clean it all up before we get in there working on it. Now that we've got it all cleaned up, we can start removing some components. The first thing I'm going to take off are these two things here. These help hold the shoes in place, and all it is, there's a spring with a cap and a pin that goes through it. To remove it, I'm going to take a pair of needle nose pliers. I'm going to push down on the cap, and then I'm going to turn the screw in the back, and I'll show you in just a second. So this is the screw that goes through the back of the drum brakes. It's got a little head on it that fits just inside of a slot here. When I push down on this, it takes the pressure off of the pin. That way I can turn the pin by hand from the back, and I can remove it so we're no longer holding the shoe in place with it. So I'll do the same thing on this side. I just take the needle nose pliers, I push down on the outsides of the spring cap, and that allows me to spin the pin in the back and remove it. Now that this is starting to get loose, the next thing I'm going to do is remove the springs that go from here up on top of this little peg here that holds them in place. They do make special tools that you can do this with. I'm just going to do it with a pair of pliers and a screwdriver. So we'll go and remove this one first. I'm just going to get in here with the screwdriver and pry up on it a little bit so I can get to the back with my second screwdriver. There we go, just pull that off. And we'll do the same thing on the other side. Might be a good idea, since we're working with these springs that like to shoot off everywhere, might want to put some eye protection on. Go ahead and do the same thing on the other side now. So. Now that we've got these two springs removed and the retaining pins that hold the shoes in place, we should be able to remove everything. Just kind of pull them apart. And there we go. So this is kind of the whole setup right here. Here are the shoes that push out on the drums to stop the vehicle. They're held together with a lot of springs, and we'll be replacing all of these as well. Another thing that we'll be replacing today is called our wheel cylinder. That's this guy right here. This is what actually takes the brake fluid and pushes out on the shoes. These two things right here, one on this side, one on this side, when you press the brake pedal, these will push apart, and it will push apart on the shoes, then pushing on the drum. Alright, so you guys are now on the back side of the drum brake. You're underneath the Jeep. This is the outside where the tire would be. Because the next thing, in order to remove the wheel cylinder, that we have to do is we have to disconnect the brake line and remove two bolts that hold it in place. To disconnect the brake line, I'm using a 10mm wrench, and there we go. You might want to put a little bucket underneath, just because you are going to lose a little bit of fluid. And that's not really something you want to get all over the ground. So I've got a little catch bucket underneath, as well as our cardboard. There's that. And now we'll actually disconnect the wheel cylinder itself from the backing plate. I apologize for the bad lighting. It's kind of the only way I could get you in there. And with that second bolt removed, we can remove our wheel cylinder. Alright, so this is just about as broken down as this drum brake is going to get. So now we can start putting everything back together. First thing I'm going to do is replace our wheel cylinder. So this is our nice shiny new one that's going to go in place of the old one. I'm not going to put you on the back side this time because I put you back there for taking it apart. Now you can just see it from the front. But all I'm going to do is I'm going to attach with the 2 bolts here and here and then reattach the brake line. If you don't need to replace your wheel cylinder, you don't have to bleed your brakes. Since we disconnected the brake line from this, we are going to have to bleed our brakes. So something to keep in mind. If your wheel cylinder is in good shape and you just need to replace your shoes, you're going to save a little extra time by not having to bleed your brakes as well. Now that we've replaced our wheel cylinder, we can install our new shoes. Now I went out and got a whole new spring kit. It was just a universal drum brake spring kit. So I'm going to be replacing kind of everything in here. You don't really necessarily need to do that. If it's just your shoes that are gone, you don't have to go in and replace all the springs and everything. But that's what I'm going to do, so I thought I would just show you guys anyway. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to install our rear shoe. This is going to have a little pin on the bottom of it, and is going to attach to this part that's still attached to the drum brake right now. This little piece is going to go in this slot and connect them together, and we're just going to kind of put it in place with the round part going up here towards the centering pin on the top. Same thing is going to happen on the other side, except there's nothing really to attach it. I'm just going to kind of push it into place, again with the round part coming up near the top. So there's nothing really holding these in place right now, so I'm going to hold them and do this next part at the same time. We're going to reinstall those springs that hold them in place. So this is the new spring with the cap and the pin that holds it in place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push the pin through the back. I'll show you. Right down here at the bottom, there's going to be a hole that the pin goes through. Then I can put the shoe over top of that, and you can see the pin sticking out through this hole here. Then I'm going to take the spring, put it over top, and I'm going to have to push it down with my needle nose pliers and then turn the pin from the back to seat it in place. So it should look something like this. There we go, push it in, turn the pin from the back, and now this is held in place. I'll do the same thing on the other side. Well, after about 10 minutes of struggling, I finally got the second one on there. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to install this little metal bracket that goes across with a spring on it. It's kind of hard to see what I'm going to do, so I'm going to hopefully explain it as best I can. The metal bracket it's got a fork on this side and this side. This side is going to go right. There's a little notch on this side, and there's a notch on this side where the metal bracket will line up. And then this side also has a spot for the spring to sit in. So you kind of know which way it goes because you can see that the spring will sit inside of 2 little notches that'll help retain it. So I'm just going to put it behind the axle here, underneath the wheel cylinder. Line it all up. And then I can push it together. Like that. Now what we're going to do is kind of work our way from top to bottom. So we're going to line the brake shoes up here and try to get them to fit nice and tight up here on this pin. Like so, like that. Then we're going to take a retaining clip, this guy right here, just looks like a little T with a circle on it, and push that up against there as well to help hold it all in place. After that, we have our brake cable here, so that's going to loop around the top and come to the back here. Now we can start putting in our spring. So I'm going to start on the front side. The spring just clips into the shoe, and then we'll go over this center section as well. Now, they do make a special tool that'll help you out a lot with this, but I'm just going to do it with a screwdriver. You're going to have to hold everything in place at the same time as you try and loop this spring up over this. So I'm going to hold it in place. Boom! Just like that. The back side here is going to be very similar to the front side, except that we're going to have to put in this little metal piece for the cable to run around. So we're going to put our spring through that and then attach the spring to the shoe. Let me get this out of the way for now. Okay. Now when we attach the spring here, we want to make sure that this bracket stays flush up against the shoe there, so just kind of keep an eye on it. Looks like our bracket stayed in place, so now we can loop our cable around the bracket there and let it set. So now that we've got the top of the shoes all held in place, we need something to hold the bottom of the shoes in place. We're going to use this spring between this big hole here and this one here. So the spring is going to be on the outside of the shoe. We're just going to hook it on one side and pull it across to the other. There we go. So again, that's just now putting tension on the top and on the bottom, holding everything in place. Now what we're going to do is attach a spring and a bracket. This spring is going to go up on the post here, and it's going to go with this hook facing down. So it's going to need a little bit of force to compress the spring to get it in place. There we go. And now we can install this bracket. So the bracket's ovaled out a little bit. There's a larger side that you actually slip over the pin and then pull it to the smaller side. Now we're going to take that spring that we just attached beforehand, we're going to bring it in front of the bracket and then loop it up and over this arm here to help hold it down. So now that's under tension. The next thing we're going to install is this guy right here. This is our automatic adjustment mechanism. What happens is this thing will spin, and as it does, it pushes these two sides apart. This is threaded here. And what that does is that pushes out on the shoes here, and that way as these shoes wear, it'll still keep them close enough to the drum brake that you don't have noticeable pedal travel before this will contact it. So to put it in place, what we're going to have to do is pull the bottom part of the shoes apart a little bit. I'm just going to stick my screwdriver in here and use that as a little bit of a crowbar. And I'm going to put it in between this vertical piece here, and there's a vertical piece that has a little notch cut out of it right behind our bracket here. You can't really see it, but hopefully you can see the notch cut out of this one. The other side looks exactly the same. What we're going to do is we're going to put the side of the bracket that pulls just straight out and in, that doesn't have the threads on it. We're going to put that side closest to the bracket. That way it doesn't move farther or closer to the bracket. And the other side is going to have the threaded side that's going to push out on it. So it should look just like this when we install it. This side just pulls straight out. Go. Now just to show you how it works, so this has the spring on it, and this is the bracket that we just attached, and this digs into these teeth here, so it only allows it to spin one way. So I can click it this way, which is going to push out on the drum brakes, but I can't spin it back the other way. This gets in the way of that. So what this job is as these pads wear, this is going to allow it to turn and keep pressure on the drum brakes so you don't have a whole lot of pedal travel before you do that. We are going to have to adjust this since we put on some new shoes, and I'll show you how to do that in just a second. Before we do though, we have one more part to attach, and that is this cable here. It has a spring with a little hook on the bottom of it. That is going to attach right here to this part of that bracket. So let me get a screwdriver. So I'll just hook on the bracket here. See if I can get it in. So here now we have all brand new internals inside of this drum brake. The last thing to do is put the actual drum on top. So just line it up. And there we go. Now, before we're done though, what we want to make sure is we properly adjust these. If they're adjusted too far out, you won't even be able to get the drum on. The shoes will be pushed out too far and it'll stick. If it's not enough, again, you're going to have a lot of pedal travel before you even start hitting the drum at all. So we want to make sure there's just a little bit of drag on these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this off. And the only way you can spin it is the way that's going to push these out. So you're just going to click it. You'll hear it click a couple times. And I'll test it. And again, we want just maybe to feel it a tiny little bit. Go a little bit more than that. Try about there. And that right there feels about perfect. If you do go too far, what you can do is you can just pull this bracket out of the way and then you can spin it back. But when the bracket is in contact with the adjuster, you can only spin it one direction. So that should be done for now. The only other thing I'm not going to show in this video is going to be bleeding the brakes. If you replace your wheel cylinder, this guy up here, you will need to bleed your brakes because you disconnected your brake lines. If you're just replacing your shoes here, you won't need to do that. So I won't show it in this video, but I do have another video all about bleeding your brakes. So I will leave a link to that at the end of this video. Alright guys, that's going to do it for today. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and leave them down below. And if you like what you saw here, please like and subscribe. If you did replace your wheel cylinders and you want to know how to bleed your brakes, click over here. And if you want to know how to service disc brakes, click over here. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.